We do now. I'll then hand over to the Premier for his opening remarks. Thank you, Premier.
Thank you very much, Regan, and to all my colleagues here. Thank you very much for joining me. To you, the citizens and the media that have tuned in, you will have known that during the flood, the height of the flood, we were coming to you regularly with these kinds of press conferences, and it was felt we need to update you once again. Just taking you back to that time, it's exactly a month ago that we had the second major flood in our province this year, and a major flood it was. You'll remember then 150 odd roads across our province were closed. It was devastating to many parts of our province. In actual fact, in the last 3 months, we've had 3 sets of floods in our province, but we're mainly talking about the recovery from that major flood a month ago. I think you will all remember that we first had to make sure that we had to save lives. We had to get in there and make sure that people's lives were saved, people were safe, people were put into halls, we got food to people. So it was obviously the disaster response. And then from then on, we've had to rebuild. We've got to rebuild, at the same time reopen, and that's what we're going to hear now from infrastructure, and get the roads open as quickly as possible so our economy can move forward. We've got harvest season coming in now. We've got tourism season coming in now. So it's critical that we continue to focus on the economy, and we've got to rebuild as part of the economy. But also, we've got to be absolutely mindful of the impact of climate change. And I think this has shown us that climate change is definitely alive and well in this province and bringing about a massive change to how we live. And of course, it's got to bring about a massive change on how we rebuild. Can we rebuild, bearing in mind that it is going to rain again? And these floods that we've had now are between rain that we haven't experienced in 100 years and sometimes maybe even 200 years. So really a major amount of water that fell over a very short period of time. But we've got a plan for more of this to come, more rain, and of course then also more drought. And with drought comes fires. So it is the exact impact of climate change that this province is feeling. And we have to build back responsibly. We have to build back, bearing in mind that climate change is going to be with us going into the future. But with that, thank you very much for joining us in this press conference, and hopefully that also gives you a lot of an update of what we've done over the last while, but also what we still have to do. And perhaps my last point is just to say to every citizen in this province, thank you for stepping up where you were needed, for helping your fellow citizen where it was needed, for just being kind during this really tough time in this period. And of course, there's still some places that we still have to fix. And then, of course, to those officials, from disaster management officials, health officials, education officials, and specifically our traffic and our roads officials who've been out there day and night rebuilding, getting access, and of course, keeping calm on our roads while this has been happening. I really want to say to you, thank you very much.
Thank you, Premier. And I hand over to Minister Burdell. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Premier. You've covered the base from the Disaster Management Centre. And yes, we talk a lot about the damage, the trauma, and the loss of life during the tragic weekend. But we don't often talk to the lives that's been saved because of the systems that we had in place. Now, I think, without a doubt, going through a level 9 warning, the highest ever, and coming out of that and I've lost 9 lives only, showcase that your systems work. Your systems, the investment, the previous 10 years helped us to save a lot of lives. And I'm very proud of not only the work that the disaster management team has put in, but all our partners, the NGOs, the 4x4 people, NSRI, your SAPs, the DSD helping with relief packages, etc. Everybody just coming to the table and helping and supporting one another, part of our huge success. That Monday morning when we open our doors in, or when we woke up in the Disaster Management Centre, we had something like 154 roads closed, 82,000 people without electricity, and Overstrand, 60 meters of their main inlet water pipeline was just flushed away. 4 days later, on that Friday, we had, I think, 68 roads closed, only 1,000 people without electricity, so they fixed within 4 days. They put back to grid 81,000 people on the grid, and Overstrand was slowly pumping water in their reservoirs, showcasing that partnerships and how people stepped up, working 24/7 to just get the system back up and running, because we need to protect the economy, we need to protect lives, and we need to protect property. So now we prepare for the fire season. You mentioned it, Premier, because we were in climate change, and even when we look at the photos and you see a lot of water, we think fire season is coming up 1st of December. 1st of December till end of March, we will, if you look at the stats, deal with anything from 17 to 22,000 fires. And in the past, we managed to put out 95% of those fires within the first hour. And the teams are ready. Our system is up and running. We do have the necessary equipment to deal with the fire season, but we are also going to call on the citizens to work with us, to be aware of their behavior, because behavior out in nature can cause fires, etc. So it's a partnership also with the citizens. From my side, thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, as important as the immediate response to the disaster was in the hours and days after that inclement weather that we saw in these regions, so too was the response to repairing damaged road infrastructure, which was vast in the days after the storms and flooding. I'll now hand over to our team at the Western Cape Department of Infrastructure, just to bring us up to speed as to where we are with our progress in reopening all the roads that have been affected by the adverse weather. Mr. Simmers and Mr. Jan Rebacher, thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. And indeed, within the 1 month, we have really amassed and managed to really bring a lot of the closed roads back online. And per district, we really need to commend our district teams, noting that all of the repairs are done in-house by our capacitated teams. We still have 18 roads that's left still partially closed or affected by one-lane traffic in the Overberg district, notably Clarence Drive, also the R43, R44 intersection, because repairs are still ongoing. So we do ask for a bit of patience in that regard. I do believe something of note is the Butt River Bridge, and the latest update I've received just prior to coming to this meeting is that Sunrail Premier is on track, and they do envisage that the Butt River Road itself will open by the 3rd week of November. So we are well on schedule and on track for that latest update. In terms of the Cape Winelands district, only 5 roads still remain closed. Obviously, this is also one of the areas where the McGregor Bridge was repaired within 21 days, and on the 21st day, we saw the first wheels rolling across a neatly tarred road as well. All the roads that were closed in terms of province are open in the city of Cape Town. Garden Route, we were well on track to actually open up all the roads up until the rain we saw over the last 9 days within that specific district, and 5 roads still remain closed. However, it should be noted that the Kaimans Pass and the 7 passes in George were actually, we had teams on the ground reopening them within hours after they were closed. So we do need to commend the district team there as well. In the West Coast, we only have 1 road that still remains closed, and we do ask for vigilance and for commuters who do use that road to please adhere to the rules of the road. But the biggest question has been over the last 30 days, how do we determine what roads to close and how do we determine which roads to open? And for our viewers and the citizens of the Western Cape, this is the 5-point criteria that we will use before I hand over to the slideshow. 1, our first objective is always, Premier, to ensure the road is made safe. Secondly, we seek to restore some form of access, even though limited in this vis-a-vis through one-lane access stop and goes. Thirdly, we find a temporary solution like we are doing and have been doing in the Cape Winelands and the Overberg, where a road is totally washed away. 4, we then establish one-way traffic as a temporary solution for those roads as well. And 5th, and finally, which is where we are now, final repairs to ultimately ensure the road is optimally utilized and safe for public, but also for commercial use. I'll hand over to Yandre to do the slideshow which we prepared as well in that regard. Thank you, Yandre.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Premier. The following is just a visual update of what has transpired over the past couple of weeks. If we look at the McGregor case, these photos prove to you how deep the
the sections of the bridge approach was washed away, but luckily that 1959 bridge remained standing steadfast. So that is what we had to fill up. And if you can look at the scale of the machinery, it looks like a small job, but once you start including scale into the photos, you start seeing how much work had to be done. There's just the team working on site, making from your first visit, Minister, to the next slide, which is later on, literally working through the weekends, through the night, to make sure that we get traffic back onto the main road. We had alternative detours through private land, but those were obviously not built for the kind of traffic that route takes. And then we get to the next set of slides where we see our team busy with the final compacting and the base layers that are there curing on your side. And there we have when you were on site, Minister and Premier, and when our first vehicles started moving over. If we look at the next set of slides, which speaks to the Hemel and Aarde Road. Now, Hemel and Aarde is one of the roads that are still closed, Premier and Minister. Quite a bit of extensive damage. Once again, if we just go back one slide, if you look at the top left-hand corner, and you see the scale of the people, then you start seeing the sections that were undercut. It's quite significant filling that needs to be done before we can safely reopen. If you look at the top left-hand side of the screen as well, you can see that even the surfacing, there's still signs that damage has occurred further on into the roadway that our engineers must first establish whether that is safe to pass. If we look at Franschhoek Pass, this is an exciting one for us because, once again, we are hard at work to make sure that the pass gets reopened to specifically small or light motor vehicles. And then if we just go back one slide, if we can see over there, that's the kind of damage. Once again, the scale sections of the road completely washed away to about mid-lane. But on the right-hand side, the right slide, you can see our Jersey barriers are. If we look at the next slides, there we have, once again, if we look at the timestamps, on the 27th of September, that entire slip was covering both lanes of the Franschhoek Pass. We have, on the 23rd of October, went and got you some physical proof, Minister and Premier, that we've cleared that section so that we can start bringing in one-lane traffic accommodation into Franschhoek Pass. If we look at Clarence Drive, the first couple of pictures shows the amount of rubble that might look like just a small layer of debris on the road surface, but once again start seeing it in heaps, to the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you will see that it's quite a bit of material. At one stage, we were looking at about 10,000 tons on that specific stretch of road. And then if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the road is basically ready for reopening. Our main focus is now to get Clarence Drive open. It's currently open from the Gordons Bay side to about the Grill Shack, and that section is to get it open to Kwagga Bay Beach. Then the next set of slides will show you why we can't open beyond that yet. Top left-hand picture shows it looks like a waterfall, but that is actually the roadway. And basically that entire stretch of road up to about midway through the far lane has been undercut. So it is going to take considerable filling to get that open, even to one-way traffic. If we look at the next slide, then we get to the R43, R44 intersection. Minister, that is also one that we visited, and you will recall these photos when you were on site. If we go to the next slide, then we can see the work that has already been done. We've already stabilized the lanes that are currently in use, and we are now working on reinstating the lane that has collapsed since our last visit. So work is already and happening on that section as well. Spanjaardskloof, our next set of slides, that shows you just where we had to do some different kind of work. So where we had bridges that have been washed away, we had to put in temporary bypasses. So that, as well as the next project, which is our Pebbles project, shows you again that unfortunately you can't use the bridge and just fill up there, but we have made sure that even though it's a very basic bypass, at least your heavy motor vehicles for farming and agricultural purposes can access the area while we reinstate the bridge. If we then look at our Valley Road project, there once again we show you that on 1 week nothing. The next week we had a temporary solution in place, Premier and Minister, to make sure that our communities are connected in some way. That's speaking to your priorities, Minister, of first establishing basic access before we do a final response. If we then just look at what happened, I know Premier mentioned that we're focusing on the Heritage Day weekend, but we just needed to mention what happened in the Trudeau Pass this weekend. Because the ground is so saturated, a little bit of rain can cause a lot of chaos. So in Trudeau's Pass, that's the kind of slips that we had to deal with, but that is being moved as we speak. So we already had one lane traffic open within hours after that slip, and now it is to get two-way traffic accommodated again. If we're going to our basic follow-up, and I'm going to run very quickly through the next couple of slides. Minister's already covered this, but what he didn't cover was down from how many to 18. So if we look at the last time we were in this room, we had 68 roads closed in the Overberg, now only 18. Cape Winelands 50, now only 5. Cape Town had 5 closed, all open. The Garden route, unfortunately, that's where we saw that change due to this weekend's weather system. And the West Coast, we had 20 down to only 1. So I really want to echo the sentiments of our leadership in congratulating the teams. Then the rest is just a summary of the actual roads, which we will share on our website as well as social media. And the green ones are the ones that we previously recorded as red being closed. And you can see the number of green ones. The blue ones are for local access only, which means if you have a property along that route, you will be allowed to travel that, but we don't want excessive amounts of traffic on those routes. So we go through the West Coast where it's all green, except for that one little one right at the bottom at 8 Cape Pass. If we go to the Cape Winelands, once again, all green, and then we get to Cape Town Garden route. Unfortunately, the Garden route is where we saw that weather system, just putting back some of our work. And that's it from our side, Premier, Ministers. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre, for that update. We'll now hand over to our team from the Mobility Department, and I'd like to welcome Minister Ricardo McKenzie.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us this morning. Our Western Cape's Mobility Department redeployed hundreds of our provincial traffic officers for flood relief, over and above the usual pressures of long weekend operations with the increased volumes of traffic on the road. Just to give you a sense of the scale of the long weekend operations, between the 21st and the 25th of September, our officers stopped and checked over 14,000 vehicles, with almost 500 seatbelt offences, over 500 moving violations offences, and they made 44 arrests for driving under the influence. I'm proud of these men and women who work long hours in cold, wet conditions to make sure residents and visitors to our province got home safely over that long weekend. By directing traffic away from damaged and flooded roads onto safe routes, there is no doubt that they help prevent many potential crashes and the loss of lives. On slide number 2, I want to thank our provincial officers for their dedication and hard work and visit them personally during that period, because it does not stop them for just doing their work. They've consistently gone above and beyond to make the Western Cape safer for all. I must implore on all road users to meet the dedication of our road officers with equal amount of commitment for safer behavior on our roads. And I want to say that we have the World Cup final this coming weekend, and with high hopes of another victory for our Bokke, based on the trends during the semi-final weekend of increased road crashes and incidents, all road users need to take extra care this weekend. Please do not drink and drive or walk near the road. Do not speed, buckle up. These are the simple actions that we all can take to make a difference between life and death. We want to see everyone getting home safely and celebrating the Bokke win on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. To echo those words, yes, we need to be responsible over this weekend. It's a big one for us. I'll now hand over to our team at the Western Cape Department of Education. The inclement weather we saw over the Heritage Long weekend also impacted some schools to a lesser degree, but still worthwhile having our team from education on this briefing just to bring us up to speed as to where we are. I'd now like to welcome Ms. Heather van Stav from our education department.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Premier, Minister, and all other colleagues who have joined us online this morning. So our report is fairly short, but we do wish to report that the majority of our school closures at the time and disruptions to schooling were due to either the flooding itself or to road damage, which then obviously created access problems. In total, the storms affected 249 of our schools. Of these 249, 149 schools reported some form of damage. The remaining schools experienced absenteeism due to inaccessible roads and then also transport being affected. Most of the damage, fortunately, could be addressed in cleanup operations by the schools or by the schools themselves. On the Tuesday after the long weekend, which was Tuesday, the 27th of September, we had 39 schools which then needed to be closed on that day. That number declined as the week progressed, as transport routes opened and cleanup operations were finalized. Then the school holiday or schools closed on the Friday of that week, which allowed, fortunately, in our case then, for further mop-ups and cleaning during the holiday period. When schools reopened on the 10th of October, which was the Tuesday, all schools opened as normal except for one, which is Sandshill Primary School. In the case of that school, we had arranged alternative accommodation at various sites for both teachers and learners of the schools, and they are currently still there while the repair work is being done. We've also made sure that we have arranged learner transport to the alternate sites, and currently we are glad to report that all our schools are operational, and even at Sandshill Primary School, we are able to say that all learners are able to come to school every day. We don't have any rotation or any tripping of any kind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Heather. Our Western Cape Department of Social Development was critical in helping to coordinate and facilitate the humanitarian relief process after the flooding. So we'll now hand over to the head of department, Mr. Robert MacDonald, to bring us up to speed as to where we are in that sphere.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good afternoon to the Premier Ministers and everyone on the call. The Department of Social Development took on the role of coordinating psychosocial services and access to humanitarian relief for affected communities in the Disaster Management Joint Operating Centre. Following the flooding, Social Development's local office staff, together with municipal officials, community development workers, and SASA, conducted outreaches in affected communities and farm areas. The NGOs, including South African Red Cross Society, Gift of the Givers, Ashraful Aid International, Al Imdad Foundation, Heal Our Land, and We Love You Foundation, as well as many businesses and private individuals, have been providing support. And we'd like to thank all of them on behalf of the Western Cape government for their efforts under very difficult conditions. DSD also partnered with Red Cross Society to secure collection points for donations from the public, and donations received and distributed included blankets, water, dry and non-perishable food, baby food and toiletries. To date, 10,282 people were provided with humanitarian relief in the city of Cape Town metro area, as well as 2,319 people in the Cape Winelands district, and 1,277 in the Overberg district. We've also been continuing to work with SASA to institute the social relief of distress grants as well to those families who need them. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, HOD MacDonald. We'll now open the floor to questions from the media. Just to remind you, you can send those questions through on the Teams call in our chat box. If you'd prefer to send them through to me on WhatsApp, I will be putting my number in the chat box there. You can also email them to me. So you can start sending those questions through. Maybe just to start the process, if a lot of questions have been coming through in the interim, so I'll open this to the panel just generally, but maybe the Department of Infrastructure would be best placed to field this question. Do we have any updates on the total cost of the damage caused to infrastructure? Minister Simmers.
As stated earlier this morning, I did a technical briefing. The last estimated cost is still pegged at just over R500 million. Obviously, with additional rain over the weekend and further damage that is not factored into the costing, and also the roads, which is still not been assessed fully by our technical teams, but we do peg it at just over R500 million as we speak.
Okay. And of course, that excludes the impact on the agriculture sector, which was also vast. And we'll bring you up to speed on that as well. A question coming through on WhatsApp. What is the status of the disaster declaration, Minister Bredell?
Just to maybe start by explaining the process, you must remember that even during the disaster, we start to do an assessment of the damages, but the inaccessibility of the area, and it was a very vast area, it was Cape Winelands, Overberg, Garden Route, as well as the city of Cape Town. We've had to wait for the water to subside and to get into these areas with our partners of agriculture, infrastructure, etc. Then we need to verify that information, and they're busy now with they've done the verification with the local authorities on the damages. Now we're busy sending the information through to National to ask for the classification, after which National Disaster Centre will then come and verify our information, and if they agree that on our guesstimate or estimates of the damages, then we will await for the National Disaster Management Centre for some relief funds from their disaster kitty. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Another question directed towards, I think the Premier would be best placed to field this one. What lessons have we learned from the two major storms that we've seen since June and September? What would we do differently next time? And this is for the Premier and maybe Minister Bredell as well. The Premier, you can start off.
So I think, first of all, Minister Bredell started to answer that question when he spoke about years worth of investment into disaster management, into the systems. And I think Minister Bredell will be best to speak about, the electronic systems that determine the level 9 and how much water and who to evacuate. And I think that's really showing us that investment is paid off in lives saved, actually, at the end of the day. So that's critical. But I think for us going forward, in what we're saying is into the future, understanding climate change, are we prepared and are we building back better? So I think what Mr. Simmers was talking about, the engineers and the work that they're doing, for example, in the Himmel and Ardo Valley, is having a look at the river itself and the impact that the river has and how that is affecting the road rebuild. It doesn't help to rebuild the road exactly the same as it is and leave the river as it is if it's going to have more water coming down. We've got to build other mitigations in. And I think I think in the past we've seen in some of the roads that we have been building and some of the bridges that we have been building, we do take that into cognizance when we design them. So you might see a flood happening in some of our passes where we have already rebuilt roads, and you will see the flood waters will come up, we'll clear the mud off afterwards, but the integrity of the infrastructure is still in place. And that's about designing for the future. And we're seeing that in the roads that they're building. And I mean, you saw that also in Ashton with the bridge that was built. If the previous bridge had just been repaired or was still there, it wouldn't be there today. It would have washed away. So, yeah, I think, and that's what we've got to do in all of these areas where our roads have washed away. We've got to bear in mind, when we build it back, can we mitigate the next flood? Can we put in extra of those pipes that you saw in the river, or bigger culverts to make sure that we can manage the water when it comes? And then, of course, I think there's also further work. Minister Bredell's busy doing work at the moment on having a look at how we make sure that we have our riverways cleared so that, the water can move without blocking up and flooding. And we've got to make sure that we clear the rubble and the rubbish on the sides of a river. If it is there, it's got to be cleared, because that all, if it's tree stumps, they build up against the bridge infrastructure, and then that eventually washes it away. We've got to clear those riverways and pathways, and so we're busy working on it. Those are the lessons, and I think we're showing that we're already applying that kind of thinking in our planning. Minister, I don't know if you can talk about the electronic systems that talk to what floods and level 9.
Yeah, I think you've covered it, Premier, but I'll touch on it. I think future thinking, we need to bring in and understand climate change as well as population growth and as well as the consequence of bad planning. We need to get it right because a lot of the damage was also caused because of planning and planning mistakes that we made in the past. I think the river rehabilitation program will be crucial going forward to get that right. And then internally on the system that you speak, it was system design internally through our own disaster management people working there. The weather services sits within the disaster management center. So if they tell us that we expect 100 millimeters of rain in the Berg River catchment area, they put it into the system, and the system will plot which areas will then be flooded. So we can then call the municipality and tell them if you've got critical infrastructure like pumps within that area, you must remove it because the water is on its way. Sometimes people think we're mad because it's sunshine outside and we tell them to remove their pumps and the infrastructure. We go to the people living under the bridges, we tell them you must remove your stuff, water is coming. They tell us the sun is shining, are you mad? But we explain to them and they understand that through that system we saved a lot of lives. We managed to clear people out of harm's way. And I think we've done excellent work, but it means also that going forward, we need to invest in these systems. I'm a bit worried that our weather services is getting outdated. So talking to national, understanding the importance of investing into modern radar technology, etc., so that we can understand the cold fronts that's going to hit us so that we can get people out of harm's way is going to be crucial. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Premier. Thank you, Minister. A question from the Cape Argus directed towards Minister Burdell as well as Minister Mackenzie, but I think Minister Simmers could also maybe just pitch in here. Are there any concerns that the increased traffic volume in the December holiday season will roll back some of the progress made, given the pressure on the roads over the festive season? Perhaps we can start with Minister Simmers speaking to road infrastructure.
Well, from a road infrastructure perspective, and I mean, we are geared fully knowing that there will be an increase in the number of road users across our network, the provincial road network. Hence, we are, on schedule to open up this road so they can actually carry the additional vehicles that will be utilizing our road networks. Obviously, there will be caution to these road users to actually, adhere to the rules of the road. Where we do ask you to drive a bit slower to do that, it's for a specific reason. But all in all, it's to ensure the overall safety of our network and the safety of the road users, also to enjoy our scenery along our various areas across the Western Cape.
Minister Burdell.
Yeah, and when my colleagues' roads gets people to their destiny, then we need to look after the water system to see to it that they get water to their households, etc. Now, last December was a very difficult December for us, Premier and colleagues, because of load shedding. If there's load shedding, then the water pumps doesn't work. The sewage come to a standstill, and we had a very long December and January to keep the system running. And I want to thank this provincial government for making 89 million rand available to buy pumps and to help especially our smaller municipalities, our coastal municipalities, to keep that system running. So we do have that infrastructure. We've invested in that. And obviously we'll keep a close eye to see to it that we get services to especially our coastal towns. Remember, a place like Cape Agulhas, normally they must prepare for 5,000 permanent residents. During December, there will be up to 100,000 people going to that area. So we need to have the systems and the storage facilities to see to it that we can get the critical services to the households.
Thank you, Minister. Minister Mackenzie, anything to add from a traffic point of view to that question?
From our traffic point of view, our operations will be ready. We welcome visitors to the province, and I've seen over the last few weeks, our traffic officers has worked extremely hard during the storms, and they're ready for December. We're looking forward to welcoming visitors in the Western Cape during the December period. We're just asking them to abide by the rules of the road. That's all we're asking them. Behave on the roads, don't drink and drive, but please come and visit you. We love visitors to the Western Cape, and we appreciate that you come and visit our beautiful province. But just abide by the rules of the road, and everything will be okay. Thank you.
Because you'll get fined.
Thanks, Minister. Yes. And just one last question, just to close the question and answer session of our briefing. It's directed towards Minister Simmers. A follow-up question. Can you just re-emphasize how you go about prioritizing the reopening of roads and repairs. What is the process and the thinking behind which roads you decide you need to prioritize and those which you don't need to prioritize?
Well, first we look at the economical value of the road. Does the road connect the community or the municipality to interlinking other municipalities? So, of course, the economic perspective, but also the traffic volumes and use of that specific road during a specific period. But also look at the safety of the alternative routes, which we can utilize while we repair the road. But also, can we establish a one-way traffic temporary solution as we seek to repair the road, and that is the categorization we use. That is now for all of our provincial network. It also applies to our non-tarred or non-paved, or as it's commonly called, gravel road network, which is the same rules apply.
Thank you, Minister. And maybe just worth emphasising, we approach everything we do at the Western Cape Government with our whole of government and whole of society approach. We can do very little without the buy-in from our communities and our residents, as well as the private sector and stakeholders. I'll now hand over to the Premier for his closing remarks. And just to remind you that we will be issuing a statement after this briefing, just to fill in all those gaps, those information gaps. And if you do have any further questions post briefing, you're welcome to email me or you can WhatsApp those questions and I'll do my very best to get back to you. Premier.
Thank you very much, Regan. Thank you very much, ministers and officials that have helped us with this press conference and this update, but also once again to every person that's been involved and as Regan just said, the whole of government and the whole of society. It means all together we're in this and we all put shoulder to the wheel, and by doing that we make the biggest positive difference that we can. I just wanted to add one or two things and maybe add to Minister Simmers talking about 500 million rand, the estimated cost of damage, 500 million rand. And I think that number could go up a bit because of the analysis that's been doing on some of those roads like Clarence Drive or because you could see on those passes the integrity, and that depends on what the outcome is going to be. That number could go up. But I think we've saved a lot of money because of the internal systems that we have in place, our own team. So I want to say thank you specifically, Minister, to you and the teams, because it's our own bulldozer operator and digger operator and steamroller and tarring systems, and so thank you very much to the teams day and night to get much of this mobility access open and able. So thank you. I also wanted to say that two other roads that were not mentioned today, the one which is I couldn't believe that it was open so quickly, and that was Chapman's Peak, a key tourism road for the upcoming season, but it was closed this week because of rockfalls. So I think there's a message there as well. Many of these roads were closed because of flood damage. There's also a lot of potential risk even when we open them. So we need to say to everybody using these roads, please do so carefully. We might have got it open for you, but there might not be sufficient barrier on the one side, or there might not be, a stabilization on the other side, and a rock could move. You need to be vigilant and careful. And then there's one other road in the city of Cape Town that I know I get a lot of messaging about, and that's called Kloof Road, and it's not on your report. I personally went to go and have a look. And it also has some serious damage, much undercutting underneath the tar. The city have given a report on it, but I was also there seeing the new pipes going in and the work being done. And they're also saying that that's a few months away, but hopefully we can also get a stop and go before the season on that road. And with that, I just once again to say thank you very much. I hope that these updates are useful to you, the citizen. And once again, thanks to everybody involved in enabling us to do so. Have a good day.